Hello, 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 and welcome to another extremely professional YFP fellowship. Just in case anybody missed it, I made some green Jello, and I'm very proud of it. I don't know if you guys like Jello, but it was delicious. I think maybe I'll put some whipped cream on it next time and make it look like it's fancy. Today, I believe we are going to talk about combining finances. We took a vote last time, and that is what everyone decided to talk about. So, if there are any questions unrelated to combining finances, please hold those until the end. Does anybody have any questions that they feel are pressing and need to ask right now, though? Nope, I got a couple head shakes. All right, cool. Can you all see my screen? Perfect. All right, so this is meeting number 10. So we have this one plus two more is all we really have. So today we're going to do combining finances based on the vote. We're going to do financial independence, retire early next time, so we can kind of get a gauge on what it looks like to basically save all your money. And then we're doing wrap up and conclusion. So we'll do a meeting of the Tims during that meeting. So we'll bring on Tim Olbrich, Tim Baker, possibly Tim Church if I can find him. And let you guys ask questions to two pharmacists and one non-pharmacist, Tim. And then also, I really want you guys to be really like brutally honest and tell us like how we can make this better, right? So this was a beta test for a reason, because we've never done anything like this before. And we are testing it out with a minimal-ish effort on our part, just to kind of get a vibe for how this flows. And I want to know what you enjoyed, what you hated, what you'd rather see better in the future, and if it's all Tom's fault, mostly. All right, cool. Any questions or comments, concerns about the schedule? The next meeting will be on November 9th. I will warn you, I may have quite a tan at that point. I have my military weekend the weekend before. I'll be driving back from Gila Bend, Arizona, where we're going to blow up a bunch of explosives because I'm on the bomb squad in the military. I don't know if you guys knew that. We're going to go blow up a bunch of stuff, and then we'll come back Monday afternoon, and I'll come straight here for this. So that'll be fun. We'll do the 9th of November, and then we'll do the week of Thanksgiving. So this final one is the week of Thanksgiving. So if that's a problem for anybody, please let me know in the Mighty Networks chat. Maybe we can shift it, but otherwise we're going to hold it on Monday the 23rd as our final meeting. All right, so today we're going to talk about combining finances. So we'll talk about some considerations. We'll talk about some different models. We'll talk about some implementation differences. I will warn you. I told Tom this when we started. I didn't really like this presentation that we had built out. Allison, I don't know if that's a cat or somebody creeping in your video there. Is that a boyfriend? Yeah.
Relevant topic for tonight.
It's perfect. He can scoot over. I didn't really like this presentation, so I started to rebuild it as we go. So I'm going to be talking a lot kind of off of the screen. So not from the screen, but kind of away from it. So feel free to ask questions as we go, as always, and we'll try to get this going. Biggest questions to talk about when you're deciding on if you're going to combine finances here are your finances merged already? If they are, to what extent? That's actually important because a lot of times finances merge before you realize it. So maybe, you started sharing a Netflix account, when you're really early on in a relationship. Maybe you have a pool of money that you use to pay for things. Maybe you send each other money back and forth to pay for meals if you're going Dutch, or to pay for rent if you're living together, or to pay for this, that, or the other. So you're kind of, if you're any of those topics, you're kind of already combining finances. It's kind of important to realize where you are already, because it's not likely that you have nothing combined if you're having this conversation. If your finances are not combined, do you ever want to do it? Is this something you even want to do at all? Especially if you're going to break up with your boyfriend soon, Allison, just in case. No, okay. If there is one person who wears the financial hat in the relationship, that's important, right? The person who does more of the budgeting, the person who does the planning, the person who does decision-making. That's important to kind of acknowledge from the start, partly because If you both think you're in charge, that could be an issue. If you both think the other person is in charge, that could be an issue. If one of you thinks one's in charge and one doesn't, that could be an issue. So that's just something to figure out. And also respecting that if someone is the kind of the CFO of the relationship or of the unit, there's a lot of extra stress there. So it's something to acknowledge and say, hey, you're the decision maker of this. I respect that. I'm going to give you more flexibility. I'm not going to fight you on everything, because if you're going to be the decision maker, then you're going to be the decision maker. Does that make sense? All right. So these can be run as a republic, a democracy, or a dictatorship, depending on your own financial preferences. So, all right. So some considerations before merging finances. First, it's really important to have conversations about money in life, right? So money is extremely personal. Everybody is going to come from their own place when it comes to money. Some people call those a money script. Basically, there's things that have happened in your life that make you feel a certain way about money. If you grew up poor, then maybe you want to live a life of excess, or maybe you want to pinch pennies, right? So there's no this for that. There's no, I had this experience, I have that outcome. Everybody's going to interpret their experiences differently than each other, and they're going to live those out in the future differently as well. So it's always better to understand where someone's coming from to get a better idea of how they're going to interact. Because if you have a feeling about money and your significant other or finance partner or whatever term we want to use has a different view on that money, it's going to cause issues. It's going to cause stress between the two of you if that's not completely fleshed out, right? So we want to make sure we have a plan in place for big topics, right? If it's a wedding coming up in the future, we're going to pay for that. If it's a budget, which is way more pressing, normally in short term, what are some of those goals? What are some of those planning topics we need to look forward to? What are some of those long-term goals, right? Combining finances can really impact some of the long-term aspects like retirement, paying down debt, having kids. And if you're not on scale with the long-term stuff, it can really impact your short-term stuff as well, and vice versa. Does that all make sense? All right, I might be rambling a little bit tonight. We want to talk about money early and often, right? So you want to start you want to have conversations to the point that they're almost uncomfortable, right? You want to basically get inside somebody's mind, right? So I said at the beginning of this, we're going to get financially naked together, right? So basically, I want to understand where you're coming from. I want to understand what you're at and what you got going on. And that's really important. So the easiest way to do that is to focus first on areas of agreement. So where do you line up, right? Let's focus on the places we line up, and then we'll attack the things that we differ on, right? If we both realize that we want to spend money going out on entertainment, cool. That's a way we can convene on that. And then if we want to fight over how much I spend on shoes versus something else, right? You guys may not realize this. I'm a super sneakerhead, right?
Wait, really?
No, Tom, it's just for the story. I never wear shoes, Tom. I live in the middle.
I'm sorry. I know we've been working together for a while, but we've never met in person thanks to Zoom. So I never see your feet.
Putting Tom back on mute. Yeah, so basically finding out like where the differences are in those lineup after you kind of come together as a team, right? We want to focus on budgeting questions, right? We want to focus on financial goals. We want to focus on retirement savings. So a lot of this is going to feel repetitive, and because it kind of is, because these are big topics that we have to hit, right? Questions so far? Tom, I own like 3 pairs of shoes. All right, so 90% of Happy Cosmos discuss money at least once a month, right? One of the biggest issues when it comes to relationships is stresses from finances, right? That's financial stress is one of the biggest issues when it comes to couples and relationships. So we want to make sure that we have open and honest conversations about money so it does not become an issue, right? If you're talking about it from the start, then no one's going to be surprised. No one's going to be caught off guard. No one's going to be confused at why something is happening for the most part. I could still spend $300 at a bar and that's going to confuse everybody, including me the next day. So some common money issues that we're kind of talking about here. Spender versus saver. That's really common. One person wants to save a bunch of money because of their personal money script, right? One person wants to spend a bunch of money because of their personal money script or where they're at or their emotion or those feelings that day. Maybe they want to spend more money. Maybe they get joy from shopping while the other person only sees it as a utility to do a thing, right? Spending control can be a problem. That's me at the bar, spending too much money. So find ways to combat that, right? Maybe when I go drinking, I only carry cash, which is a very common way for me to drink, so I can't overspend. Hiding accounts. Hiding account is super common historically. So we want to make sure that you're not hiding accounts from each other, right? You shouldn't have to hide things from someone that you're going to be a financial partner with. So if we have accounts that are separate, that is one thing, but if they are a secret, that is a completely another thing. One person being that CFO, right? So that chief financial officer of the family, that can be an issue. If it's the wrong person, that can be an issue. If both of them don't agree, that can be an issue if one person doesn't get the respect for taking on that extra duty, basically. So definitely something to talk about there. Debt. How is debt handled, right? Maybe you both come in a relationship with debt, but in separate levels, right? Is your debt yours? Is your debt ours? How do we handle this? Do we tack one first? Do we tack both first? Is it everybody for themselves? Kind of how does this play into effect? Different people feel differently about debt as well. Some of you are debt numb, meaning debt doesn't really matter. It's just a thing. I'm going to have it forever. It's no big deal. We're going to cross that bridge eventually. For other people, it really tears you up and says, I hate having this. I'm going to do whatever I can to get this to go away. I will eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the next 4 years to get rid of this. Maybe I'll add a banana from time to time into that sandwich, which is kind of what we did when I was little. And then helping family. Helping family can actually be a really contentious conversation when it comes down to, hey, you're good for nothing, brother, is never going to pay us back. Maybe you understand that you're going to be helping your parents when they get older, right? Your parents helped raise you. You're going to help take care of them when they get older. Maybe that's a cultural difference. Maybe it's a familial difference. Maybe it's my parents totally suck, I would never give them money difference. Who knows? Who cares? But the conversation needs to be there. If you know that you have a parent, sibling, relative who's going through hard times and you're going to give them some money, that just needs to be a conversation, right? It shouldn't be like this money just disappears. Everything should be a conversation. And if it makes sense, then you do it. And if it doesn't, you talk it out until it does make sense, to be honest. But any questions there, or any other big common issues you've seen either amongst yourselves or amongst people around you that you want to share? Cool. Love it. Real good interaction tonight. We're flying. I like it. Money dates. Has anybody heard the term money date? Allison has. Tom has. Tom's our budgeting specialist. I totally forgot about this. Tom, do you want to talk about money dates for a minute on the fly without me telling you at all?
Sure. Yeah. So my background real quick for everyone on the call. Basically, I've been working for YFP for a couple years now. I run our budgeting program. So I work with the clients. I meet with them anywhere from every 4 to 8 weeks. I teach them what a budget is, and then we periodically check back in every month or so to see how their spending's going. So in the very beginning, a lot of couples in particular, because we're talking about dating here, so couples particularly come into the budgeting program with not much of a plan in place or a budget in place. They probably don't talk money. Maybe one of them wants to. One of them is like, oh my gosh, I just want to curl, underneath the table and not look at it. So in the beginning, I stress that for some couples, you have a date. You make it fun. You make it the opposite of a PowerPoint presentation. You sit down and you talk about whatever topic that's in your life currently. Maybe you're trying to buy or rent a bigger apartment, or maybe you're trying to plan for children or purchase a car. And so in the beginning, you have a fun date where you watch a movie, go out to dinner, cook a fun meal, make it interesting and not just 100% financial. Once you've done these dinner dates or financial dates, a couple of months in a row, and you've kind of broken down the awkwardness of talking finances with your partner. Eventually you want to be able to have these sort of dates impromptu. You want to be comfortable around him or her and vice versa, so that you don't always have to like come to the table, so to speak, and have this big meeting about it. But you know, like Robert and I both know, it's different for every couple. Personally, Robert and I handle our finances with our partners a little bit differently, and that's okay. But getting the ball rolling and getting that communication started around the topics will make things a little bit less awkward. Did I do a good job there, Robert?
Did a phenomenal job, Tom.
Thank you.
A silent round of applause for Tom. Oh, we're snapping. Oh, yeah. So money dates are super valuable, basically just because it's an awkward conversation, right? Money is personal. Money is a place of embarrassment for some people, humility for others, when they realize they feel like they have more than they should, or when there's a disparity between the two couples, two people in that conversation or more. I don't judge you, whatever, whoever's in your financial structure. But it's important to sit down and have those conversations, to talk about, hey, this is how we're doing this month. You know, I realize we spent way too much money on Whataburger, which is my fast food chain nearby. Fucking love Whataburger. You guys know that. I talk about it almost every time. Maybe I spent way too much money on Whataburger. Me and my wife need to have a conversation about that. Maybe something's going to change with the financial institutions around. Maybe Ally dropped our savings account. We're going to have to talk about money talk, right? It's not always got to be big goals. It's just making it more comfortable to have conversations that are generally on. And money dates are a great way to start that. If you guys can both sit down over a spreadsheet from jump, do that. Much more efficient way about this, and it doesn't require you sitting at a table in public talking about how much debt you have. But whatever it takes to get out there and do it is important. You know, maybe you sit in a group with like 10 to 25 other people, and like your significant other just creeps in the background sometimes and sits slightly off screen, just the back of their head sitting in the video. Who could that be? Any questions about money dates? No? All right. Some core questions, right? So past, present, and future. This is those money scripts I was talking about, right? So basically just having these conversations, and this is not like, hey, let's sit down and have this over a money date. This is just as you're getting to know somebody, you're going to learn about them, right? Again, finances is very personal, so this is going to take a while. Like you may be with somebody for a long time before you really figure out like, hey, what did you learn from the way your parents approached their finances, right? That's not a very smooth question to ask. Is there anything in your past that makes you uncomfortable about money? Those are not how those questions are going to come up, but those topics are really valuable, right? Hey, you know, my father, this is a true story. My father's truck got repossessed a ton of times when I was a kid, right? Power would get shut off. So for me, like I can never be late on a payment. Like that is just like not allowed in my mind. I'll never be late on a payment because I've seen what happens when that happens, right? So sometimes if I don't know when a payment is due, like we're paying it today. Like it could not be made for like 30 days. Maybe we just paid it, but I didn't see it go through. We're paying again, right? And maybe that's an issue if like money's tighter, but like that is not something that I'm going to compromise on. It's because of the way that I grew up, right? So that's how my past is impacting me, right? So how are you currently handling your finances, right? That's a big one. Most of the people in this fellowship are pretty young. So who the fuck knows how to handle money, right? You guys are in a much better situation now than you probably were at the beginning of this, just from like conversations with strangers about money. But the majority of people that we deal with who are, you know, 25 to 35 are kind of like, I don't know, I'm just kind of getting by right now. Hey, how's your debt right now? I don't know. I have some credit card debt. I don't really know if it's good or bad, or if I should get rid of it, or if I should do anything about it. You know, what's working, what's not working. Just having those conversations is really good. So you can learn from each other, right? Maybe you have strengths that the other person doesn't have, right? You're obviously a good team if you're planning on teaming up. So you're going to have strengths and you're going to have weaknesses. Hopefully they counteract each other and give you a nice balanced, cohesive group, but there's no way to know until you talk about it, right? How do the assets or debt that each of you have change the way you might want to handle your finances, right? My wife came to our relationship with $200,000 in student loan debt. I don't have any debt. So cool, that's going to change how we handle things. Maybe somebody is older. Maybe they have, a house, maybe they have kids, maybe they have other debts or assets that they're bringing in, right? How does that conversation work? Is this a us thing? Is this a you thing? Is this a we thing? Is this a me thing, right? Just all of that, as long as it's commonly understood, then we're okay, right? There's no right or wrong answers here. It's if we have an understanding and it works out for us, then it works out. The best plan is the one that works. That's all that matters. And then future stuff, right? Do we want to merge our finances? Do we want to keep them separately? Are you expecting inheritances or gifts from your family, right? How would you use that money if you did? These are things that, again, you don't want to start that. That's not date number one, sugar baby, but it's something down the line, right? Basically, hey, in the future, maybe I have to help my family. Maybe my family's going to be helping me. We actually have a client who told me that their family is going to buy him a Lamborghini when he graduates his program. And I'm like, well, that's amazing. Can I get adopted? But like little things like that. Some parents are going to buy a house for them. Other people are going to do the exact opposite. And when they can, they're going to buy their parents' house, right? So all of these issues are just something you want to be aware of before you get in financially into these conversations, right? You want to know what the things on the horizon look like. If there's data for what the future is going to hold, I'd like to know it before I make conversational decisions. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, so there's a couple different models when we're combining finances, right? This is not an end-all be-all list. These are three very general ideas here, okay? And the reason that we have different ideas is because there's a traditional way and there's kind of a millennial way, right? So traditionally speaking, people got married really early and they started a family really young. And that blows my fucking mind that somebody could get married at like 18, right? My folks got married when they were 18 and then divorced and then married to each other. So like clearly like it's different, but historically speaking, there's a greater percentage of single income households, right? So somebody in the family worked. And there was a less need to like figure out combining finances because it was just kind of what you did. We have one income, we have one checking account, maybe we have a savings account, right? Maybe we have one charge card because people didn't call them credit cards back then. Right, but now it's different, right? So couples are settling later, right? Marrying later, having kids later, if at all. There's way more dual income families, right? So we have to figure out different things. So modern problems require modern solutions. And that's what we kind of have to go with, right? So the three main methods here, models, are basically the all in it together, keep it separate, or the hybrid of yours, mine, and ours. Okay, so they're pretty straightforward in what they sound like. All in together, keep it separate, yours, mine, and ours. Okay, and it may seem like people like everybody puts their money in together. That's not reality. Okay, based on data, it's a third, roughly. Okay, basically a third of people put it all together, a third of people keep it all separate, a third of people keep it as a hybrid model. And to that end, actually, my sister and her husband do this. They're all in together. That's all they have. They have a checking account, and I think they have a savings account. I'm not even positive on that. They're not great with money. So they have one checking account, one savings account, and that's it. They have one credit card. They keep it all together. It's simple. It works for them. That's what matters. My sister-in-law, they keep everything separate. He has accounts. She has accounts. He pays some bills. She pays some bills. They transfer money amongst each other when they need to, but they have completely separate banking setups. And that works for them. They've been married longer than me. And then the yours, mine, and ours. This is a hybrid model. So this is actually what I use personally. So I have some accounts. My wife has some accounts. And we have some joint accounts, right? Who's got the best plan? Who's got the worst plan? Who's winning? Who's losing? It doesn't matter. Whatever system works for you and yours is what it is, right? Okay, so let's kind of talk about these a little deeper. So all in together, right? So couples bring all assets and liabilities to the table into joint accounts held in both people's names. That's just like what it sounds like, right? It's simple, it's easy to understand, it's easy to set up and manage, and it can cultivate closeness. I will say I didn't write some of these words on these pages, and you can tell the ones I didn't write because that's how I say them. But it can cultivate closeness is a fun way to put that. Basically, it brings you together, right? This is what it is. Some of the problems with an all in together method is you have to be 100% aligned. If you have one checking account and somebody starts seeing money disappear for things that they didn't agree to, or they don't appreciate, or they don't understand, or they don't like, or they don't blah, 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 that's going to be problems. Okay. So you have to have a good understanding of how that works, right? And it can create resentment. If I decide to go out and spend $300 out of our joint account for drinking, that could be an issue. If nobody else agrees with that but me. And it can be messy in the case of a split up, right? So I'd like to pretend that everyone's going to be together forever. That's not the case, proven by American statistics. So it's kind of important to understand that if everything is all in one account, that's going to make it harder if and when you do ever split up. Questions about the all in together? No? All right. The single income life. Yes, Thomas.
I'm in an all-in, by the way, for everyone on there. So I know I said earlier that Robert and I and our wives, handle things a little bit differently. I'm in an all-in together. Kind of like what Robert said, the biggest pro of it is it's pretty dang simple. We just have one big main account and everything comes out of it. But also, like Robert said earlier, since we didn't get married at 18, we got married at 28 or 29. Our financial paths had already started way before we ever met each other. So she has 2 credit cards that she's had since she was 20, and I had 2 credit cards, and we both are on each other's credit cards. We don't use them anymore. We use the main credit card that we opened up together. So if I do need to buy her something for Christmas or for her birthday or an anniversary, I can buy it on the credit card that she won't see right away. But basically everything's all together just for the simplicity factor. And if anything, what I've learned in the last couple of years is there is no right or wrong way to do this. It's picking a method and sticking with it and communicating that so that both partners know what the plan is and no one's in the dark, kind of a thing. Did I miss anything there, Robert?
No, it's good.
Okay.
I mean, you didn't say anything about cultivating closeness, but
it definitely cultivates closeness.
The single income life. So the single income life is a conversation to have. Basically, if there's only one income coming in from a household, or if you want to live off of one income coming in from a household. Okay. So if only one person is earning money, you definitely have to understand how money is going to be spent, because I've been in that relationship where my wife made money and I didn't. And we had to have that conversation because she is the sole breadwinner and we just got to talk it out, right? Can I still spend things? Can I still go to Whataburger, ma'am? So it's like conversations, right? Also, there's the people who want to save aggressively, right? Hey, we have 2 incomes. We want to reach this goal, whether it's debt payoff or home purchase or retire early, whatever that conversation is. Let's put one income towards living and one income directly towards that. That's another method you can use, which we can talk about another day. But basically just kind of have that understanding of how the expenses work. Make that second one, if you have 2 incomes, invisible by basically putting it towards another account. You don't want to see it in your daily spending because you don't want to misconstrue it or confuse anything. And then this is going to be a common occurrence. You're going to see me this: revisit regularly, right? In everything, revisit regularly. People change, life change, situations change, opinions change, maybe presidents change, who knows? We basically got to just revisit everything regularly and decide if we're still in this place, right? You're having those money talks. If something's not working in this setup, have it during your money date, have it during your money conversation. Just don't have it at 11:30 at night when one person's already asleep. The keep it separate plan, right? So couples keep money in separate accounts. They take ownership of different bills and divide expenses. Again, this is how my parents have done things for 40 years. This is how my sister-in-law does it with her husband for the past 8 years. So basically your finances are your own. There's somewhat less coordination necessary from an account maintenance perspective, but there's more coordination necessary for bills, right? So everybody has to understand what bills they're going to pay, what bills they're not going to pay. You can have whatever level of transparency within your spending that you want. Because your accounts are totally separate, you only have to share the information you choose to share with the other person. The cons here is it may not work well long-term. because it just gets complex, especially when you have children. It gets more difficult. Who's going to pay for what? Who gives little Robert money to go on his field trip? Is that from my account or is that from your account? But it definitely can work long-term. My parents have been together for about 40 years and they have used this method. Their accounts are still not connected, to the extent that when I go home on trips, my mom will pull out my father's credit card that she has for some reason and say, Dad's paying for lunch tonight or today. And then she'll give it back to him later when he's not around. So I don't know like how it works for them, but it does. So if anybody ever wants to go with the keep it separate method, that's totally up to you. And it works. And then there's the yours, mine, and ours, right? So you merge part of your finances into joint accounts and you put some or leave some in individual accounts, depending on how you set it up, right? So this allows for autonomy and independence. There is arguably less scrutiny and resentment, basically, because you have your own spending categories that other people don't notice. And then again, whatever level of transparency in spending that you choose. The big thing I want to make here is deciding how much is yours, how much is mine, how much is ours kind of thing is very variable, very variable. That's a terrible way to say that. Extremely variable, just variable, I guess I could say. It'd be different, y'all. So you can basically just decide, yes, we can both have a little bit of money on the side. Hey, we can have just a little bit of money in the middle. Hey, we can have infinite everything because we're baller rich someday. The problem becomes when you start making distinctions between mine and ours. That is definitely an issue that I've gone through of deciding, is this a me expense or a we expense, right? I went to the grocery store today. Those are generally joint expenses, right? So I use the joint money for those expenses. But what if I only bought like pizza rolls and Funyuns? Is that like a me expense because I'm the only one eating pizza rolls and Funyuns because I'm the only child in the house? Or is that a we expense because it's still Kroger's? Who knows, right? So those are conversations. Debt is a student loan payment. Is that a combined expense or is that a solo expense? I have clients and friends that do it completely separate ways, right? I've decided my wife's debt is a joint expense, so we pay her student loan payments together. Other people have said, you take your debt, I'll take my debt, we'll pay it off differently on our own timeframes. If I want to help you in the future, I'll do it. Retirement savings, is that a joint expense or a solo expense? Kind of how does that money work? Some people think that it can create trust issues, basically. Along the lines of like hiding money, basically. Oh, you have more money. You have money out here. That's crazy. That's this and that. So some people will take offense to that. And then always those gray areas again. Like how do you separate spending from things that appear to be joint expenses? When you go about like the implementation of this, basically you can either have all your money go into separate accounts with an allotment contributed to the shared account, or you can have everything go to the separate shared accounts and then an allotment distributed to your personal accounts. All right. Decide which income and responsibilities are shared, which ones are individual, divvy up the shared bills, right? Okay, cool. Some are easy. Rent. Okay, cool. We'll just put that in the joint account. Hey, God, I forgot to take this out. There used to be a whole section in here about prenuptial agreements. I'm not sure why it was ever in here. I hate it that it's in here. I thought I cut it all out. I didn't cleanse it correctly. Whoever made this presentation really had some issues. But prenups are a thing. If you need to talk about one, please talk to an attorney. But kind of divvy up shared bills. Find out how much money needs to be in a joint account, right? That's an important topic here. Does all the money go into a joint account and I get an allowance to my personal account, or is the joint account only funded to the level it needs to be funded, right? That's a conversation here. So basically we can split expenses 50-50, right? So couples equally contribute to a shared pool of money. It works well for two income couples, right? We both kind of put money into the pot, but it doesn't necessarily work well for big expenses, right? If we're both putting in $1,000 a month into this shared pot, that's going to pay for rent and food. Cool, but what if we want to go on a big trip? Do we then have to kick extra money in? What if we want to buy a house someday? Do we have to kick money in from our shared accounts, or should we be putting more money in there on a regular basis to plan for those? That is completely up to you. That is very dependent on your situation and your relationship. Also, you could base it on income, right? So we can both put the same amount of money in, Or what I actually choose to do with my wife is we both put the same percentage in. So when there's a disparity in income, this was our method to kind of solve that. My wife used to make way less than me when she was a resident, and now she makes way more than me. So we just did a percentage. Hey, we live in Arizona. Let's both put 50% of our money into a pot, and we keep the other 50% for ourselves. Well, how did we decide it was 50%? Basically, we added up all those expenses that we called joint. We added up our two incomes. We divided them into each other and says, we need 50% of this joint income. So boom, 50% of each goes in there. She makes more than me. She should keep more for herself. I make less. I should keep less for myself. When our incomes switch again, which they always will, because we just have an ebb and flow like that, then I will keep more for myself and she will keep less for herself. Does that make sense? Whenever we moved from Phoenix to San Jose, California. Expenses went up, right? So our joint expenses got bigger. So then we had to recalculate and decide, okay, cool. We actually need 75% of our expenses or our money to go into the joint account, and we keep 25% for ourselves. Okay, cool. Make that change, no problem. We moved back to Phoenix after San Jose. Well, life got cheaper again, but we decided to leave it at 75% and keep 25%. And now we're saving more for joint goals. So we basically can recategorize some of those expenses that were previously solo expenses and me expenses and turn them into joint or we expenses. Does that make sense? Because things change over time, right? Those Totino Rolls and Funyuns, by the way, those are joint expense now. They used to be a solo, but now they're a joint expense. This can be complicated. It can be simple. It can be whatever you want it to be, right? It's a hybrid method for a reason. It's basically just taking the best of whatever world and calculation you want to find and finding the plan that works for you and your situation. Questions so far? Question about the three big plans. So all together, all separate, or a combo. No questions at all. I'm just phenomenal explaining these things. Yes.
When you do not all together methods, do you tend to use the same bank still, or do you switch that up, or does that not even really matter?
It doesn't really matter. It probably used to matter a lot more when like there was a bank in town, and like I'm not going to have you go to another town for a bank. But with banking now, everything's at your fingertips. Everything's on your phone. I can't even tell you the last time I stepped inside of a bank. Actually, I lied. It was to get something notarized. The last time I went into a bank was to get something notarized. So like the actual time I actually used a bank for bank purposes inside, I don't even know when. So it doesn't really matter where your banks are at. If you have preferences to a bank, if you have connections to tools that you want to use, like money spending tracking, you want to make sure that they talk to each other. So if one of you has a bank with really good tracking and one of you has a bank at a credit union that just has terrible technology and they can't communicate, that could be an issue. We actually have clients where they can't transfer money. One bank's at like USAA and one bank's at a credit union. For some reason, they literally cannot send money to each other. So that could be an issue, but it's easily fixed. You just find another bank or you do a middleman like Venmo or something. But yes, Tom.
Yeah, I was going to say Venmo and to a lesser degree PayPal have kind of helped, bridge the gap between not using the same bank. I will say I think I'm the oldest person on this call. I'm the old man here. I do have a second bank account. My wife and I use Ally and USAA, but we have a third bank account with PNC. We keep literally $1 over the minimum there just so that we don't get hit with a monthly fee. But just so that we have access to physical banking, because USAA and Ally are both online. I do know that a good amount of people, especially young people, have really taken to credit unions, which is awesome. And they, have physical locations. But for us, we opened up a third account with PNC, and literally, I think we keep like $2,001 in there, just so we can go in and do banking. Which, Robert, I think I've done maybe once in the last year, but.
Yeah, so it really just comes down to whatever you're comfortable with. If you're gonna combine accounts completely, review the banks that are out there. Actually, let's just I'm gonna get to that. But so implementation. So the first thing you want to have here is those big conversations, right? You got to have those big talks before you can do anything. Kind of review your current spending, review your current expenses, discuss joint versus individual, right? What's going to fill in those categories? And remember that those categories are going to change over time, right? So what is a joint expense today may not be later, or what is not may become one. Create a debt repayment plan. Kind of have that conversation early. Decide how are we going to pay down some of this debt if we have it. Start an emergency fund, right? You're now a joint unit, right? You're going to have spending together. You're going to have savings together. We want to make sure we have that emergency fund in place. Build a savings plan for future goals, right? If you're together now and you're going to start doing joint spending on travel, right? Hey, boom, we're going to Disney World in February. Let's make it happen. I need $4,000 because I'm going to fucking do work at Epcot's around the world, food and drinking. And I need to be able to pay for all that. Let's build out that savings plan, right? Let's open that special account. Let's identify any redundancies that we have, right? If we're both paying for Netflix, if we're both paying for HBO, if we're both paying for gym memberships, when instead we can just add an authorize another user, like let's find some of those redundancies and cancel those out. You'll start to notice those, especially if you have the same banking system in the future, because you'll start seeing double bills. And then you can identify and be like, cool, we don't need 2 of these accounts. Or, hey, can I also get your brother-in-law's password? Kind of thing. Review spending regularly, right? No budget is ever going to be on point, right? You're not just gonna, I only spend $104 a month on stuff. If you live in a cash lifestyle, maybe that's the case. Maybe you do get it down that way, but still there's going to be excess. So like review your spending regularly and make adjustments as you go. And then be flexible, right? This is not going to be a one and done kind of thing. This is going to change. This is going to shift. This is going to be something that we want to be prepared to make changes in the future. If you get too rigid with any complication, you're going to break something. So we just want to be flexible. The next thing we need to do once we have that conversation is account cleanup, right? So this is basically what you're asking about here, Allison. Select that financial institution for joint money. So if you're going to have joint accounts, or even if you're not going to have joint accounts, this is a good time to review your institution and decide, we're going to have a joint savings account. Where's the best place for us to put that? A lot of times we'll recommend Ally. They all kind of suck right now, right? So Ally used to be like 2.5% interest rate on a regular ass savings account. And that's not the case anymore. Now it's like 0.55. So, okay, cool. Banks are comparable now. So find that best institution. If you want it to be everywhere and online, cool, let's go with that. If you want it to have a brick and mortar establishment, cool, let's go with that. If you need it to have a location near you or your office or an ATM machine, or you need to have it cross coast because you're going to travel, or you live in multiple states because you're going to move around, let's make sure that's the case, right? If you plan on moving to another location in the future, maybe let's get something that's nationwide rather than a local bank, right? Let's think about some of these things and pick that institution. Once we've made that selection for our solo or joint monies, then let's open those accounts, right? If it's a joint account, let's make sure both people are on those. If it's a solo account, it's just you. Once that new account is open, let's fund it, right? If we're moving money into these joint accounts, let's set that up, right? Let's suspend any automatic transfers that we have going to our previous accounts, and let's set them up going to our new accounts, right? If I'm saying 50% of my paycheck is now going into this joint account, I need to go to HR or log into my benefits portal and make that change. Cool, now 50% of my salary is going to go into this joint account. And then we want to go back and then we can close unnecessary accounts, right? I don't need to maintain the Sand Dollar Credit Union from Pasadena, Texas that I had when I was a child forever. I can close that account down if I'm never going to use it again. But as Tom mentioned, it is good to have at least one brick and mortar establishment relationship that you have for any number of reasons, to be honest. Open joint credit cards is actually my next slide. Don't know why that's on this page. Boom, credit cards. Discuss credit together, right? Credit is important. Just like spending and debt are important, your credit history is going to be just as important going forward. So if one of you has dog shit credit, you should probably know about it, because then now is a good time to rebuild it. If one of you has phenomenal credit, cool, let's make sure we maintain that and let's not tear it down. Credit's going to be very valuable. Even if you want to live a debt-free lifestyle, credit's important to make purchases in the future, even if you're going to pay them off, right? So it's really important to have. Let's look at credit scores. Yes, sir.
I was going to say, maybe you really do care about your credit score and your partner doesn't care at all. And so that's why he or she is neglecting their credit score. Just opening these little conversations. I know we talked about the dinner financial dates or whatever. Just opening up that first little topic and saying, hey, what's your credit score? How much do you know about it? And do you care about it? Because if he or she doesn't necessarily care about it, and you do, then you need to figure out, okay, going forward, if we go to apply for an apartment together or a car together or finance a house together, all of a sudden you're maybe looking at like needing to apply just you and not him or her, because their credit could actually hurt your application.
Yep. Yeah, it's really important. We got to look at scores, right? We got to look at reports. Sometimes this could be the first time one or both of you could be even looking at your credit reports, right? I think most of you look at your credit reports when we talked about credit, but finding out that there's something on there that you didn't know about, right? We brought on a client that just found out they had a $10,000 bill on their credit card that they didn't know about. So like looking at your credit reports is important. If you are going to open new credit cards, let's look at what's out there, right? Let's check it out. Let's go to nerdwallet.com, right? Let's just, I'm going to class it up. Just go to the tool that aggregates all the good deals. Maybe we care about rewards, right? I want cash back. I want travel points. I want this, that. I want points every time I shop at Costco. So the Costco card's great. I want every time I shop here. That's great. Cool. Let's look at annual fees, right? How much does it cost for this card? Chase Sapphire Preferred card or Reserve card, whichever one is better. Those cards are dope, but the annual fee is like $550. So like you got to understand the value of that, if it's valuable or not. Are there bonuses in place, right? I fly a lot of Southwest Airlines. So Southwest, if you do good enough points, you get what's called Companion Pass, which is buy one, get one flights. That's amazing. So if you get the right cards in the right order and the right timing, you can get a whole year of buy one, get one free travel. So like that's something to take into account here. If you're going to open new cards, then go open those, right? If it's a joint card, make sure we add it's a joint account, right? Otherwise, maybe you're actually just going to keep your cards and add someone as an authorized user. That is not the same as a joint card. You can both apply for a credit card. They will run both your credit and you will both be on the credit card. Or you can add someone to a card. The card already exists on one person's credit. The other person gets to tag along without their credit being run, but receives the benefit of that card on their credit report. If you are with somebody that has dog shit credit, you add them as an authorized user and then may or may not give them access to the card. And that basically allows them to build credit, right? Not something I recommend for people who are in the beginning of relationships. This is something we do down the line. You don't just throw credit at somebody because they can tear you down with them, okay? But long-term, this is a great way to help other people build credit. This is like co-signing though. You want to make sure you're understanding the process of what's happening. Once we have those new accounts open or the new account or not, let's reassess the need for specific cards, right? Some of you are going to have too many pieces of plastic in your wallet. Some of you people are only going to have one or two, right? What is the appropriate amount? Is this card necessary? Oh, I have this Home Depot credit account that I've never used. One time I bought a fridge. Oh, I have this Kohl's card because I bought an Instant Pot for Christmas. And if I got a Kohl's card, I got 10% cash to go along with the 10% cash back, Kohl's cash. And then we use that to buy something else. Maybe we can close down those cards, right? We talked about it earlier, like closing down old cards can be good, can be bad, right? But let's make those decisions now so we're not just accumulating more plastic, which is really the only downside of that is more opportunities for fraud. The more accounts you have, the less likely you are to check them, the more likely they are as somebody's going to get a hold of it and use it and you're not going to know about it, right? And then again, review spending regularly, right? Just because you have a joint card now, you're both spending on it. If you do, let's look at that and say, hey, I noticed you're doing this and that. Hey, what is this Whataburger? Why does it show up 14 times last month? Because I fucking love taquitos. Like it's important to just review that spending, right? Just have open, honest conversations frequently about stuff, right? Questions about that? Brief little recap here. Hopefully it doesn't say anything about prenups anymore. It doesn't. Cool. Communicate about money early and often, right? Have conversations early and often. Decide which model works for you right now. Make that move and then reassess in the future, okay? There is a non-zero possibility that my wife and I will eventually be on a mostly all-together plan, right? Eventually, so many of our finances are going to be joint expenses that we're just going to have a joint account. But we're always going to have something separate, right? Tom has separate credit cards so we can buy things for his wife. I have separate credit cards because I buy stupid shit that she doesn't even know about. As long as it doesn't impact our joint money, then it doesn't matter. If I want to spend way too much money on an Xbox, I'm cool with that. If she wants to go and spend a bunch of money at Nordstrom's, cool, party on. I don't even know if that's still a store. And then I like this phrase: live, learn, evaluate, and try to do better. That's literally life. Live, learn, evaluate, and try to do better. That's all you can do. Everything's going to change. Everything's going to shift. Someday there's going to be a sale on Jell-O, and you're going to buy Jell-O too. Oh, that image came out great. Questions, comments, concerns. Who's actively trying to combine finances? Who wants to throw personal stuff in here? Who wants to make up a fake scenario? Not Tom. And ask questions. Allison, does your boyfriend have any questions?
No, but you did make him pull out and add up all his credit cards that he has. I actually did have a question about like combining to potentially pay off debt together. Do you have any sense of whether snowballing versus trying to pay off, like focus on maybe the high interest accounts first for each person would make more sense? Have you had any success or opinion on that?
I hate saying it depends, but this is going to be specific to your situation. For some people, if you can actually come together and say, our debt is now combined, basically I don't have 40,000 and you have 50,000. We now have 90,000, right? If that's something you can do together, then you can get really aggressive. You can just do the avalanche method, where it's basically you just attack whichever one has the highest interest rate over everything else. The problem with that is if all the high interest rates are on one side of this equation, then one person will be debt free before the other person. And if you don't believe what you said at the beginning, that all of our debt is combined, that can be an issue. So I find that it's a good combination, right? So let's find out what makes sense. If I have two clients and they both have student loans and they're both roughly equal, we'll try to pay them off roughly equal. If it really does make sense and one of them is like 9% and one of them is like 3%, yeah, let's attack this 9% first. But we have to understand, like, this has to be an active conversation of shit happens, man. If you're debt free now and you leave, like that's you stuck with that, man. Like the other person still has that debt. So it needs to be an open, honest conversation. Mathematically speaking, it makes the most sense to just pay off the one with the highest interest. Okay. Emotionally and psychologically speaking, the snowball method is phenomenal. Let's pay off small debts. Let's get some wins in the books. And then we'll start just jacking that up higher and higher and higher. You can't compare the savings from snowball to avalanche or from paying or not paying kind of thing, because it's not one or the other, right? It's in reality, I'm paying my debt off earlier than I would have otherwise. That's really all it is. So don't compare this plan to this plan, compare it to what you're doing now. Hey, let's get more aggressive. Hey, we have some redundancies in our spending. Let's just take that money. We'll shift it towards debt. Which one we pay off. It doesn't have to be the perfect solution, mathematically speaking. It's still going to be better than where you are today. So it's definitely going to come down to the two or however many people in your relationship to decide where that money goes best. But ideally, you'd want to attack whichever one has the highest interest rate. Or sometimes it's tricky too, because you may have like a 0% balance transfer card that you can take into effect, and you can put all this stuff on a balance transfer card for 18 months, and you can tax some other debt, and you can play around with the system. There's a bunch of like areas to play in. I don't want to get too fancy, like not here, like in life. I don't want you to get too fancy. Most of you are going to be in situations where you're not going to have a long-term issue paying off your debts. It's just kind of which one. I don't want you to have analysis paralysis, so just fucking pick one and then start going. But yeah, having a really clear conversation about this is joint or this is not. And if it comes down to basically just paying it off separately at first, we have one set of clients where one has like $140,000 of student loans and one has like $30,000 of credit card. And it's basically like, hey, this is all of our expenses, but I'm gonna get real aggressive at my credit card debt, and then I'll help you. right? That's going to work better mathematically. That's going to work better emotionally. That's going to work better for both of them. Hey, you're allowing me to do a lot of things. I'm going to get really aggressive towards this credit card debt, and then we'll work together after that. But it's my credit card debt. Like, I'm not going to let you pay for it. Is a kind of a feeling that some people get. Not everybody has that. I mean, if one of us came to the relationship with credit card debt, we would just, that's the worst one. Let's murder that. And then we'll move back to student loans that are like 6%. Because credit card could be anywhere from like 13 to 30% interest. So we don't want to eat that. But does that rambling kind of answer the question? Cool. Double thumbs.
That was great. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Tom.
Yeah, and these answers do drastically change a bit the moment you get married. So the moment you get married, you should be slamming everything on the credit cards, which I'm assuming is going to be the highest interest debt you have.
Any other questions related to combining finances? Any questions from the gallery not related to combining finances? I know y'all's mics work. All right, cool.
Oh, this is Lindsay.
Oh, hey, Lindsay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for going through all of this because I recently just got engaged and now I'm trying to like think about that. Thank you. But it's just kind of hard because I don't know, there's just so many options. And so this definitely gave me a lot of things to think about. And I'm definitely the penny pincher type, eating peanut butter until we pay off the loans type stuff. And I know that my fiance's kind of like feels me like pressuring him. And like, I know that if I do this more, if I keep being as aggressive, that he's going to try to hide some things from me. So I think if nothing else, this was a good therapy session.
I think when you're just starting out, the earliest thing you can do if you're like, hey, you're just got engaged, I think just getting that joint account open, no matter what method you're going to use, right? If you decide to keep it all separate, you decide to put it all together, you decide to keep it in a hybrid. I think if you just open like a joint account to begin with, it can help also build some trust. It can help build some understanding there. And it allows you to pay for some things together, right? Even if you're going to have separate expenses, something is still going to be combined, right? Maybe it's just easiest to both put in $1,200 to pay for rent, depending on where you're at. So I think that's really, really valuable. And then aside from that, then like a joint credit card to track spending is just so valuable to get that going of, hey, now we know where we're spending. I wanted that Chase Reserve Sapphire card anyway, because I really want to stay in I don't want to sit at the waiting area for the airport anymore. I want to be in the lounge. I need the lounge. I need the free drinks and the free. I fly a lot of international trips, Tom. Like, don't fuck with me. Like, I need that lounge. But just kind of getting something out there and then kind of feeling it out, right? Hey, let's get this joint account going. We really like the joint spending. Let's put a little more in there. Or, we really don't like the joint spending. Let's kind of break it back out. But what's up?
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I'm gonna talk about. Oh, sorry. Go for it, Tom.
No, you're good, Lindsay. You're more important.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't want to interrupt. Lindsay, I would say most importantly, if you're just engaged, and congratulations, obviously, let's hypothetically, you're getting married in 1 to 2 years, start to just talk about like having a plan in place with your fiance. So like, you don't need to like immediately do everything all at once. You guys can say like, how do you feel, comfortable about doing this in 6 months from now, this in a year from now, this a month after we're married? My wife and I opened up a joint account right before we got married. So while we were engaged, we still had our own checking, savings, credit card. But then we opened the joint account that had a checking, savings, credit card. So we started to move things over. We didn't fully combine finances until after we were married, which, by the way, is a little bit of a good thing because we ended up getting gifts, checks from our wedding attendees. And sometimes they had her name with her last name. Then she took my last name. So we got checks with like every different name combination possible. So luckily we had all these different accounts, her accounts, my accounts, our accounts, that were able to handle it. And then what Robert said about a half hour ago about eventually trying to narrow your focus down, no matter what way you guys are going to go with this. Eventually, if you have a credit card that you're not using anymore, or you have a checking account that you're not using anymore, like put a plan in place. You can close checking and savings accounts and they don't hurt your credit score. Credit cards do for a little while. It's a delicate subject. But for us, like, we closed our old checking and savings accounts to kind of get a more streamlined approach, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I was wondering when I would do what, so it's definitely helpful. I think most important is making the plan. So
Yeah, we definitely did it in steps. But I mean, we were engaged for a year and a half, so nothing moved too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the first account we opened up was saving for a trip.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, let's get an account together, but we'll both throw some money in there. When it has enough money, then we can go on the trip.
Yep.
So it's no more of a, how much am I putting in? How much are you putting in? Are you sure you're saving enough? Da, 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 da. It's like, cool, it's in this account. We both have access to it. This is going to pay for what was probably something Disney related at the time. We go to Disney a lot. I don't know if you guys have picked up on that. But anybody else got a question for the group? No? All right. Well, I almost got this in time today. I never finish on time. I know Allison, normally I keep her up till our eyes are closed. But it's 9 o'clock Eastern. We have 2 more of these meetings. So next meeting will be financial independence, retire early. Basically, what the fuck does that mean? And how do I do it? It sounds great. So we'll kind of talk about that. I have a calculator we can use. Everybody can kind of play with on their own. Look for a meeting invite to come at some point. You guys know I'm real consistent with sending those out. Look for some notes to go in the Mighty Networks page. And then I might actually send out that tool beforehand. So that way everybody can pull it up on their own and kind of play around with it. But if there's no more questions, y'all have a wonderful night. And I hope the Tampa Bay Rays beat the Dodgers. Take care, y'all.
I agree with that. Good job. Good opinion.
Small club.
Thank you.
Hi, Robert.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Good night.
Bye, y'all.